Well, joining me now is Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino. Minister, thanks for joining us. Answer me this. Bill-C21, at committee stage right now, why are you adding these amendments now? Because it seems like there's a lot of confusion. Is this a problem in communications, or are you just putting in a lot more guns in there that people didn't expect?
I'm going to come to that, but first I want to take a moment to acknowledge that it's the day before the 33rd anniversary of the Polytechnic shooting tragedy, and I've gotten to know some of the families of the victims as well as a survivor like Natalie Provost, and it was in part thanks to their advocacy, the advocacy of Danforth families, the advocacy of Women's Coalition for Gun Control, that we committed when we tabled Bill C21 that we would invite an amendment that would be sure that we were doing everything that we needed to build on the order in council in May 2020.
But even Heidi Rathjen, I hate to interrupt you, but since you brought it up, even Heidi Rathjen has said in an interview that it's a bit of a communications issue here because it's not every gun for every hunter. And so why aren't you being more clear about that?
So I'm going to talk about communications, but I do want to round out my last answer, which is that our goal here, our intent all along, has been to target AR-15 style guns and obviously not to go after hunters or to use to target any kinds of guns that are commonly used for hunting. I think part of the reason why we're seeing so much confusion and fear is that there is a flooding of the zone of disinformation by some of the special interests, including the Canadian Centre or Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights, who not only is suggesting that we're, precisely targeting gun owners, which is absolutely false, but is equally taking the opportunity to exploit the worst femicide in this country's history for profit. By using a poly promotional code to ramp up sales for its merchandise. And earlier today, I called on all members of the chamber to condemn the CCFR and to ask them to apologize to the victims and the survivors of the Polytechnic Institute shooting tragedy, with whom we're going to be tomorrow. So
which is important, but equally important is clearing up which guns will and won't be, and why aren't you being clear about that?
And that's why we have been clear about that, and we are clear in a number of ways. First, you have an express number of models that are actually listed in the schedule. So there can be no ambiguity about that because we're being very precise about it. Second, we've listened to experts, including from law enforcement, about establishing some objective norms around muzzle force, around bore diameter. And by doing that, what we're really talking about are guns that are not used for hunting, but rather guns that are designed for a war theater. And then finally, what I've said all along is that we're going to work with the committee. We have a legislative process precisely to study the language of the bill. And we've always said we would keep an open door to improving it, including to be sure that the final product, the final bill, is completely in alignment with our government's goal, which is to target AR-15 style weapons, which have been used in some of the worst tragedies, and obviously not guns which are commonly used for hunting.
So this list is not the final list, then? You're going to pare it down?
We're not going to prejudge the outcome of the committee. The committee does that work independently.
So then why? But when you talk about flooding the zone, it seems like a number of them were out there, a number of the different models were out there, and that leaves it open to the interpretation. So is that not your fault?
Well, look, this is not about ascribing blame. It's not about pointing fingers.
But you just blamed some of the interest groups for saying that it's their fault for flooding the zone. So I'm asking you, why weren't you more precise in your list?
In the particular instance of the CCFR, yes, that was an egregious overstep, and it was a slap in the face to every victim and survivor from the Polytechnic Institute, and you got to call a spade a spade. But in terms of the debate that is going on in the House, what we have said is that we're going to work with all parliamentarians. And yes, there is a process, and no, it is not final. And what we will do is we will make sure that the final product will target those guns that were designed to exert the greatest amount of lethal force in the shortest period of time, and not obviously target those guns which are commonly used for hunting.
Before I let you go, I have to ask you this question on a different topic. There was some reporting today that 2 additional Chinese police stations have been found in Canada. What is the government of Canada doing to make sure that we're looking at these, finding these alleged police stations, and stopping them or actually putting them out of operation?
Well, first, we take allegations of foreign interference very, very seriously. And that is why, among other things, we struck an independent, nonpartisan panel to confirm the integrity of the 2019 and 2021 elections as both free and fair. They did that after a rigorous review, a very rigorous review. Secondly, we're also cracking down on foreign funding. We passed in the last session Bill C-76 to make sure that third parties could not try to sway or influence the results of elections. Thirdly, we passed Bill C-59. And what that included was additional threat reduction measures for CSIS, including potential threats through foreign interference to our national security, with the corresponding transparency around and the creation of NSIRA and the NSI COP, so that we could be absolutely sure that all of these new tools are being exercised in a way that is charter compliant. What's most important for Canadians to know is that we are eyes wide open about hostile state and non-state actors, and we will do whatever it takes to protect all of our democratic institutions, including obviously elections, so that Canadians can have their voices represented in government.
So what do you do about these police stations then?
And on police stations, look, you've seen some very, I think, proactive action taken by the RCMP, who are on it. And they take those decisions independently, but we give them the tools, the resources that they need. We give the tools and the resources that the national security community needs to protect us against foreign interference. And nobody is Pollyannish about that. Everybody understands.
So is that confirmation that the RCMP is investigating these two new allegations?
Well, you've already seen them make statements that they are alive to this particular threat. So we're going to let them do their job. Mm-hmm. It's not for elected government to be piercing behind the veil and going into operational independence. That is a principle that is that this government respects very much. But we know that they've made statements in response to inquiries, and we'll continue to put our confidence in them to do the job.
Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino, thank you so much for joining us, as always.